Okay, well, welcome everybody to the Aging and Disability Resource Connection Advisory Committee meeting. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I will first start by turning it over to Wilson to give us some housekeeping and do roll call.
Terrific. Sounds good. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the ADRC Advisory Committee. My name is Wilson Tam with the California Department of Aging. So just a first note, this meeting is being recorded, and also closed captioning is available by clicking the live transcript button on the Zoom toolbar. We do have two ASL interpreters today, Erica and Cindy. They'll be spotlighting themselves, so thank you. If you need any assistance at any time, you may email us at adrc@aging.ca.gov. That mailbox is being monitored during this meeting. For communication, for those that are attending by Zoom, participants should remain muted unless they are presenting or speaking as a committee member. Members can use the raise hand function to speak. And for non-members, you'll be given the opportunity to speak during the two public comment sessions. During the public comment sessions, you would just simply raise your hand, and then the chairs will call upon you to unmute yourself. If you're dialing in by phone, press *9 to raise your hand. And when called upon, *6 to unmute. So I think those are all the housekeeping rules. So I'll turn it back to our chairs, Cindy and Eli.
Great. So we are going to our first action item, which is the review of the agenda and the previous meeting minutes. Oh, roll call. Apologies.
We're still
roll call.
Is it roll call or is it
the introduction? Yeah.
For introducing Brett.
Okay. Yeah. So let me. It turns out that I was supposed to keep talking back. So I'll apologize for that. So just to continue on from housekeeping. So just want to mention that per our committee charter, our co-chairs for the committee are selected on an annual state fiscal year basis. And so I wanted to actually first introduce the executive director from the California Foundation for Independent Living Centers, Brett Eisenberg, to make announcement of the ILC co-chair for the committee. So Brett, if you're there, we will unmute and have you make the announcement.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Sorry, I was a minute late. Had trouble logging on. Great to be with you this morning and thrilled to announce at our statewide meeting, Eli was unanimously selected to continue on as co-chair. He's done an amazing job representing all of the centers, and we look forward to him continuing to do so.
Thank you so much, Brett. Truly an honor and just thrilled that you are on board as our new leader at CFILC, and just really looking forward to everyone on the ADRC Advisory Committee getting to know you and your emerging vision for our statewide network, and vice versa, for you to meet this talented group of leaders on the committee. And yes, it was hotly contested, but very, very grateful for the continued confidence of my peers, and also looking forward to mentoring the next independent living leader to succeed me in this role. So thank you so much.
And before I start the roll call, I just want to thank you, Eli, for your continued leadership, and also thank you, Cindy, too, for your new leadership onto the this advisory committee, being this your second meeting as our co-chair. So thank you both.
Thank you.
So starting with roll call, we have 19 members on our committee. I'll start with the Independent Living Center representatives in alphabetical order, starting with Carl Sigmund from Freed.
Good morning, I'm here.
Good morning, I'm here.
Good morning, Carl. Next, Eli Gillardin from the Marin Center for Independent Living, and I think he's here. I see him, and he just talked.
Still here.
Still here, still here. Good, we didn't scare him away. Third, we have Larry Grable from the Service Center for Independent Life.
Present, thank you.
Good morning, Larry. Next, we have Letty Zuno from Access to Independence. No Letty yet? Okay, team, let me know when Letty does arrive, and we'll introduce her later on. That can okay, thank you. Next, we have our AAA, or Area Agency on Aging representatives, alphabetical order, starting with Cindy Kaufman from the San Francisco Department of Disability and Aging Services.
Here.
Thank you, Cindy. Next, we have Elaine Clark from the Napa Solano Area Agency on Aging.
Here.
Morning, Elaine. Next, we have Joe Cobry from Passages. No, Joe. Okay, let me know when Joe arrives. Thank you, team. And next, we have Victoria Jump from Ventura County Area Agency on Aging.
I'm here.
Morning, Victoria. So that concludes our AAA reps. Next, we have our 5 consumer caregiver representatives, starting with Andrea Dubrow.
Good morning, I'm here.
Good morning, Andrea. Next, we have Cindy Soto.
Good morning. My name is Cindy Soto. I'm in Los Angeles. Thank you.
Hi, Cindy. Good morning. Next, we have Darlene Yee Melakar.
I'm here. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Darlene. Next, we have Erin Crutcher. She did, I forgot to mention, she did mention her regrets that she wasn't able to attend today. Fifth would be Tammy Harsh.
Good morning, everyone. I'm here.
Good morning, Tammy.
Morning.
Next, we have our other long-term services and supports representatives. We have 6, starting with Gabriel Rogan from the North Bay Regional Center. And good morning. Good morning, Gabriel. Next, we have Helen Lopez.
I'm here, and I think I mentioned in a prior email, but I am sort of double tasking today, multiple tasking. So I'll be in and out, but I'll have an ear on the whole time.
Thank you, Helen, who wears multiple hats. Next, we have Telly Takasu, and I believe she is out for this month as well. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Next, we have Ramon Costa Block. Ramon, I see you from across the room.
Here I am, present.
Good morning, Ramon. And next, we have Rita Syons.
I'm here.
Good morning, Rita. And last but not least, we have Sherry Raisler from
Good
Society.
morning, everyone. Hi.
Good morning, Sherry. That covers our 19 members. Next, we have our ex officio members in alphabetical acronyms, starting with C4A, California Association of Area Agencies on Aging.
Hello, good morning. I'm Michael Costa, and I'm here.
Good morning, Michael. Next, we have CalVet, California Department of Veterans Affairs.
Good morning. My name is David Lawrence. I'm here on behalf of Roberto Herrera and Keith Boylan, who are both traveling this week. So I'll be taking copious notes.
Great. Thank you, David. Next, we have CCOA, California Commission on Aging.
Oh, I think Carol said that she wasn't going to be able to make this meeting.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Next, we have CDA, California Department of Aging, my colleagues.
Good morning, Mark Beckley. Good to see everyone.
Morning, Mark. Anyone else from CDA?
Hi, this is Mike with HiCap.
Thank you, Michael.
Good morning. This is Vicki with CDA.
Thank you, Vicki. Next, we have CFILC, California Foundation for Independent Living Centers.
Good morning again, everyone. Brett Eisenberg, and I believe Dan just joined us as well.
Correct. Good morning, everyone. Dan Okenfuss, CFLC's Public Policy Manager.
Perfect. Thank you, Brett. Thank you, Dan. Next, we have DDS, California Department of Developmental Services.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Lucy Ezralou. I'm representing Lenani Walters.
Thank you, Lucy. Good to have you here. Next, we have DHCS, the California Department of Healthcare Services.
Hello, good morning. Courtney Maslin, Chief of the Integrated Systems of Care Division, and I have some members of the team as I will also be kind of coming in and out. Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. Other members of DHCS, if you wish to introduce yourself.
Good morning. My name is Dewey Nguyen. I'm here with UCS as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dewey. Okay. Next, we have DOR, California Department of Rehabilitation. No DOR, right? Okay.
Anna's on, but I think she's on mute.
Thank you. Sorry, I couldn't get my technology to work. Good morning, everyone. Anna Acton with the California Department of Rehabilitation. Great to be here with you.
Thank you, Anna. Last but not least, we have SILC, SILC, State Independent Living Council.
Hi, everyone. It's Allison Veramontes-Non. I'm a legislative specialist, and I'm here on behalf of the SILC.
Thank you, Allison. Any other members that we've missed that want to introduce yourself? Okay, well, that concludes roll call. I'll turn it back to Eli and Cindy. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Wilson. Thank you, everyone, for attending. I was so excited to get to our review of the agenda in the previous minutes. So we are now there. Hopefully, everyone has had a chance to review the agenda and the minutes. And if I can get a, why am I blanking on this? We approved them, right? Yeah. Okay, if I can get a motion, you'd think this is my first meeting. If I could get a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you so much. Moving to our next action item. Meeting dates.
Okay, so if Wilson sent out the proposed meeting dates for 2024, 2025. And so hopefully everybody's had a chance to review those. So just trying to get some feedback from everyone. Do these dates look okay? And part of what we also wanted to ask is we invite everyone to come in person. And so part of what we're thinking is for those who do come in person, if we could maybe do an RSVP or something along those lines so that we know what to prepare for and how many people will be here. So opening it up to the group just to get some feedback and thoughts around those ideas.
At this point, the dates were named.
Great. Everybody feel okay about coming in person and giving feedback and RSVPing for if you're going to come in person, which I did not do this time. I apologize.
There's no RSVP process yet.
Okay,
so
Yeah,
you're off the hook.
We're all right.
Okay, we're safe.
But
Fridays
we're
are
talking about maybe 72 hours or so advance notice just for members. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Andrea?
Good morning, just to clarify, there will still be a hybrid option, it looked like, is that correct? And
Yep.
also I wanted to say, it's very difficult to hear Rita when she says something. So if Rita, if you're talking and you want us to hear, we need to adjust that a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you. Elaine?
Thank you. I'm looking at this and I think January 20th is a Saturday. Is that
Mine's
right?
January 19th.
Oh, I thought I wrote 20th. I thought that's what it said. I must have missed. I just want to make sure they're not on Saturday and not Fridays, right?
No. Sacramento can be fun on a Saturday, but
yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Any other thoughts? Great, so this is also an action item. So can I have a motion to accept the proposed meeting calendar for the next it's the next year and a half?
Real quick question, a real quick comment too, that the in-person option. So right now it's at 400 R Street, but in January, it would be at the CDA office, if that works for everybody. So I think just want to note that as well.
Which is where I went this morning, started to go this morning, so I will be totally confused come January. So is that the only one that is at CDA? Wilson?
Starting in
All of
January.
them, starting in
So that way
January.
we can, be at the CDA office.
Is there parking out there?
Yeah.
Plenty of parking, free parking.
Free parking. All right.
Okay, I don't know if those are motions or questions. I'm looking, I can't see it. Sherry?
Yeah, I can, make the motion. There's just one tiny correction, and that's the January 2025. It says 2024.
Oh, thank you.
And I'll make the motion to accept the dates with the one correction.
Great, thank you. And Rhoda, did you have your hand up?
I did, but it was for that date as well, so all good. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
I'll second the motion.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hey, motion carried.
Great. So moving right along, agenda item number 4 is an update on our ADRC business plan, and as well as a discussion. We're also going to have public comments after that for members of the public to further follow up and ask questions and discuss the business plan. So Wilson, handing it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Wilson again. So just a reminder, and I know Manat has had the opportunity to present the draft ADRC business plan in the past. But just as a reminder for everyone that, our goal to achieve a statewide no wrong door system, and also as a follow-up to our ADRC SWOT analysis report that was conducted and finished earlier this year, CDA has been working with a consultant, Manat, and also our state ADRC advisory committee to develop, again, an ADRC business plan. And we see it as a roadmap for expanding and sustaining our ADRC network statewide, and also positioning ADRC as a fundamental building block of the statewide no wrong door system. And so with that, Manat has been leading stakeholder engagement sessions with our state ADRC advisory committee, specifically via the sustainability work group, to discuss 6 components of the ADRC business plan, which Manat will talk about in a moment. And before I turn it over to Manat, I wanted to recognize and thank Joe and also Larry for their leadership on our sustainability work group, and leading our stakeholder feedback and engagement sessions with Manat. So Joe, Larry, if you want to say a few words, please feel free.
I don't know if Joe's on the line, but I just want to thank the committee and Manat for all the work that went on through this period of since January, I think we started about. Just been a great conversation that we've had every week. Or every meeting, and just want to thank all for the participation, and Manat, Caroline, Stephanie, Zarin, you guys have been awesome. Thank you for listening. Thank you for taking our comments and incorporating them into the plan.
Perfect. Thank you, Larry. And with that, I'll turn it over to Manat. Thank you, Manat.
Thank you. Thanks, Wilson, so much. And yeah, Larry and Joe, thank you for your guidance throughout, really, and all of your participation on all of the sustainability work groups and all of the other times we have been able to connect with folks on the advisory committee, as well as the core partner execs that we've talked to along the way. So we do have a deck here. We're going to talk through quickly. We're going to spend most of the time on the business plan recommendations, those 6 components. I just want to acknowledge that we haven't come back to you collectively since July 21st. So the last time we met with you, we really had just finished kind of the working sessions on each of the 6 components. So while you may have seen some of the recommendations around August, this is the first time we're actually talking with you collectively about the final business plan recommendations, and not final because we really do want your feedback and input on them. But so today we're going to just talk about what we want to do in the next hour, the meeting objectives for the next hour on the ADRC business plan, provide a brief overview and context for the work and how we got here where we are today, and then really spend the bulk of the meeting on the recommendations and sub-recommendations in the business plan. And Wilson did send out a pre-read document that went through the recommendations and a level down sub-recommendations the other day. So we're gonna, if you have that and we're able to read through it, you might want to have it handy with you as you go through this, but we are gonna talk through all of them, just so you know, and then we'll wrap up. Okay, so meeting objectives. As I mentioned, we want to get your feedback on the business plan recommendations and priority actions as we have teed up for the first, few years of the business plan, and then just wrap up by telling you and letting you know what the next steps are in finalizing the business plan and release and dissemination of the business plan. Go to the next slide. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So just Wilson mentioned this, just want to again just say how important it was and how grateful we have been to work with all of you over the past 9 months or so. We did develop this really listening to all of you, really in lockstep with the sustainability work group of the advisory committee through a series of 5 meetings since January. We've also have been able to obtain the input and expertise of the 2 other subgroups on the advisory committee, the training work group and the data and outcomes work group around specific proposed recommendations in the business plan, and then have been able to meet with all of you several times throughout the year, as well as meetings with the core partner execs. So really just want to kind of just re-endorse that this was a business plan roadmap around statewide ADRC expansion with all of your input on the key milestones and recommendations and sub-recommendations. You can go to the next slide. This is a table of contents for the business plan. And today I'm going to very quickly just talk about the overview and context. We're going to spend the most time again on the recommendations. And I just want to flag that the implementation plan, at least a high level of it, in terms of the highest priorities, risks and mitigation strategies and success metrics. We have a slide on each one of those in the appendix, but obviously the full business plan will have more detail when you see those. Today, we're really just going to focus on number 2, the recommendations. You can go to the next slide. In terms of the overview and context section of the report, we really just wanted to make sure we were setting the business plan or roadmap for ADRC statewide expansion in the context of all the work going on in California. Not only really your work to ensure kind of the promise and vision of the Americans with Disabilities Act and the Olmstead decision and your Olmstead plan, but how it all fits in all the other work going on in California around the master plan on aging, the No Wrong Door Leadership Council, No Wrong Door System Leadership Council, which is getting up and running, and that this is an important part of many ongoing activities in the state. State has a growing older population, as many states do, but as the population ages and people are living longer with more chronic conditions and with disabilities, the partners in the ADRC model and the ADRC, the local ADRC themselves will, going to play an increasingly important role in preparing for this demographic and ensuring access to information and access to services that are needed by these by older adults and people with disabilities in California. A well-functioning statewide ADRC model. I already talked about its role in advancing Olmstead commitments and mandates, aligning and integrating systems that provide services to overlapping populations. People are not only elderly or senior older adults or people with disabilities. Many people are both and using services across different systems. So really aligning and integrating systems, facilitating streamlined access to the service delivery system, including the healthcare delivery system and long-term services and support system, providing equitable access to a core set of services, regardless of an individual's age, ability, or place of residence. And then again, I mentioned earlier, functioning ADRCs and the ADRC model really functioning as a necessary component of a statewide no wrong door system. I won't read through these, but on the right-hand side in the green box, we've laid out California's vision and goals for ADRCs, which are from CDA's, visioning documents that I think you were all contributed to in terms of developing the vision going forward for ADRCs. I think you can go to the next slide. Where this slide actually is a very high level summary of the collaborative consulting SWOT findings that Wilson mentioned earlier. That collaborative consulting released in, I think, January or early February of this year, where they did the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis of the state's ADRC model. So this is a high level summary laying out in the first box the strengths that California does have the foundational elements to achieve statewide ADRC coverage in terms of strong partnerships, state and local in large parts of the state. There's a governance structure at the state and in many communities already in place, and a financial baseline with the ADRC infrastructure grant funding, and that there are existing designated and emerging ADRCs that can share best practices. In terms of some of the areas for improvement and opportunity, there needs to be more equitable and consistent access to ADRC statewide, making sure that the shared partnership envisioned in the ADRC model is strong across the state, that there's consumer, client, and family awareness about ADRCs and the services provided through ADRCs in the network. And then obviously funding stability and growth, very important. The last box, I won't walk through bullet by bullet, but just to say that, given the strengths and the areas for strengthening, there are opportunities to strengthen the ADRC service capacity across the state, partnerships, funding, and performance monitoring. And that's where the business plan does provide some of the roadmap to take advantage of and close the gaps in those opportunities. Okay, so that's the high level context. I think we can go into the business plan sections, the 6 sections, unless anyone has any high level comment. I know we want to spend most of the time on the recommendations and sub recommendations, but if anyone has any high level thought, please jump in. Otherwise, I'm gonna.
It looks like we have a hand up from Gabriel.
Okay, go ahead, Gabriel.
Gabriel Rogan from North Bay Regional Center, and I'm embarrassed to ask this question because I probably really should know the answer to this by now. But your intro paragraph talked about people who are 60 and older who also may have disabilities. So that suggested to me the target population is an older population who also might have disability. But then in one of your bullets, it said, regardless of age. So then I was thinking, what if families of children with disabilities show up for this no wrong door system? Are they also the target demographic here? I really should know the answer to that, but when we say all ages, are we talking about kids with disabilities and teens with disabilities? Or are we just talking about older adults who also may have disabilities?
It is a great question, and having worked in the long-term services and support system, there's always a question about, what about kids? Are we talking about kids? Because they also use long-term services and supports. I don't know, Wilson, if you want to jump in, or anyone else, about the, the clientele served by the, obviously it'd probably be the ILCs, the Centers for Independent Living. But there wasn't a huge focus on whether kids are included or not. And I just don't know to what extent any of the core partners or extended partners are serving kids. So I don't know if someone else wants to jump in.
Wilson, do you have any thoughts?
I was just going to say, and Mark, feel free to chime in as well. I believe the focus of the ADRC business plan is primarily on adults and not the children population.
In that case, you might want to just be careful about that language, regardless of age, because it could be interpreted in different ways.
It's a great point, Gabriel. Thank you. We'll clarify that.
Looks like Larry has a hand up. Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, that just kind of gets to me a little bit because independent living services serve anyone with a disability, regardless of age. And I truly believe that the ADRCs, being its aging and disability resource connection, should service all people, regardless of age, that have disabilities.
Thank you, Larry. And I just want to jump in. I wanted to hold my comment till someone else commented, but I completely agree. And because this is building off of SWOT analysis, and this really is a plan to build out the ADRCs, if we are leaving children and families with disabilities, which includes individuals with intellectual disabilities, out of this, I think it's an incomplete plan. And because it's still in draft form, I strongly suggest we re-examine that lens. There is a huge population of younger people with disabilities, families, parent training and information centers, family empowerment centers, family resource centers, foster youth with disabilities. I understand the ADRC can't be everything for everyone. At the same time, I feel like we're missing the mark if we do not include children and families of children with disabilities. And I see Tammy with her hand up.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Just would like to, Eli, thank you for that comment. And just kind of want to elaborate on that as well. So it's a very great point and a great discussion because, my granddaughter is 8 years old. She's type 1 diabetic. She also suffers from some physical and just health issues that are going to be long term. So I think this is a great discussion and probably something that I was part of the business plan. So I wish I would have, brought that up while we were having our meeting. So yeah, I would really appreciate reevaluating that definition of the individuals that we serve. Thank you.
I would also just like to, I think it coming from a AAA perspective, right? We serve adults and older adults. I think it kind of strengthens our partnership because we will get phone calls and we will get calls of what about kids as well. And with the partnership that we have with ILC, it allows us a nice warm handoff to be able to provide services to folks. So I do think it strengthens the partnership as well.
I have a question about that. So obviously the attention on older adults is a result of the master plan on aging, and ADRCs come out underneath that. So that may be why we stuck to 60 and over. One of the things to think about if we're going to be including children is whether or not the ADRCs provide the types of services for children that children need. So we'd have to clarify if those services are only referral or if the ADRC can provide those services. And are we going to need additional training for people who are running the ADRCs who are used to working with adults to ensure that if children come to us, that they're properly served?
Rita, that is a great question. Wilson?
Yeah, and just to piggyback on, and that's a great point, Rita. I think, thinking of ADRC as really a partnership or a navigation and access model, right? If we have the partnerships in place with organizations that do serve children with disabilities and their families as well, I think we could definitely, make those referrals, but that's as long as that's in the local ADRC system. I think that's the important key point. But yeah, going back to Rita's point about, the master plan for aging and such too. Yeah, I don't know if we can, with ADRC funding specifically be able to serve children and families. However, I think for our referral system and part of our model and partnership, it'd be good to have those in place at the local level. And we would encourage that. We have been encouraging that. So.
Absolutely. I see Betsy with her hand up. And then Ramon.
Thank you.
Betsy Harper with Sonoma County Area Agency on Aging. And I wanted to agree with many of the comments around the aging and disability instead of aging, like both, it's either or, right? Not to belabor the point too much, but I think that much of the language that already exists in the ADRC world is inclusive of families, care providers, etc. And there's a really natural overlap, especially when we talk about families with disabled children, right? We're providing services for those providers, and we're touting that we're providing resources for those providers. So I think it's natural to network with organizations that also serve families and children, and that's everything that we've geared towards in our area agency on aging and our ADRC efforts. And so I just wanted to just bolster that viewpoint. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ramon.
Ramon Casablanca, San Francisco State University. I also think that it's critical that we integrate these services. They overlap already. I think it's somewhat an artifact of the state's organizational structure that it might have been thought of as, well, we deal with, aging people, but not children with disabilities. But the situations are so overlapping, I don't think it makes sense to divide them. And also, I'm going to advocate later on that one of the elements of this plan be some training, some consistent training for all the ADRC staff. And then you could deal with the issue there of the ADRC, the AAA staff, getting some support in terms of handling this other population. But I think it should be across the board, both populations.
Having been in social services for 50 years, I would say that probably no social service provider would consider themselves ethical if they do not have some sort of a referral system. So, it's just kind of basic, I think.
Yeah.
That we are prepared for some sort of referrals.
So I see Larry with his hand up, and we're going to make that the last comment on this specific item, just so we can keep things going. So
Yeah.
Larry, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Eli. Just in all my research on doing the ADRC stuff and starting our application, working with the county, I don't recall seeing an age limit in any of the print. It just says people with disabilities. So I don't know, is it because the funding's coming from aging that this has become a conversation?
Yeah, this is Mark. I can respond to that question. There's not, so with the ADRC funding, whatever populations the AAAs serve are required to serve, like under the Older Americans Act. And there are some age limits for certain services that would apply. For the ILC funding, it's whatever populations you serve. So if there's no age limits on your services, you'd be free to use the funding to serve any populations.
So I think thank you, Mark. I think we've gotten some pretty clear input on this. And I see Stephanie nodding her head. So Stephanie, we're gonna give it back to you to further go over the plan, but great conversation.
Thank you. It was a great conversation and so important. And you're just seeing in my head several places we need to be clearer and more specific on this. So thank you. Really, really important discussion. Okay, so I think we're going to spend the bulk of the rest of the time going through and getting your feedback on. We're not going to again spend half an hour on each topic, but we're going to go through the business plan components. There's 6 of them. The 6 are, you can go to the next slide. You can go to the next slide. So this just at a high level, the 6 components we're going to walk through are governance and administration and partnerships. Then we're going to do funding and capacity building. And then we're going to do information systems and communications. And you can go back to 10. So what we're going to do, again, you have the pre-read that has the next layer down of sub-recommendations under each one of these. So for example, I'm going to talk about on like A1 and A2. That's governance and administration, recommendation 1 and recommendation 2. In the pre-read, you're going to see 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. to, so just so you know, we're gonna verbally talk about them. You have them in the pre-read, but obviously want your feedback and thoughts on all. And you don't have to give them all of them at this meeting. We're gonna give you a chance in the full, with the full business plan to provide feedback electronically also after the meeting. So we're going to start with governance and administration, but before we go to governance and administration, at the top of the next 3 slides, but we're just stop here. We just wanted to remind everybody of the goal of the business plan, what outcomes we are seeking to achieve, and some of the guiding principles that led to the development of these recommendations in conjunction with all of you, and particularly the sustainability work group. But ultimately, the goal is to strengthen, expand, and sustain ADRC partnerships across the state with the outcomes of access, so that consumers in every county can access all ADRC services. Service capacity, every ADRC has a plan and resources to strengthen and enhance their core services. And no wrong door is every ADRC across the state is equipped to support and act as a kind of key component of a statewide no wrong door system. And then in terms of guiding principles, we lay out balancing flexibility and standardization, and that's trying to acknowledge that the ADRC is fundamentally a local partnership and network. So really, ensuring there's some flexibility across the areas of the state, but then there's also some standardization and potentially even centralization of infrastructure support from the state. The second guiding principle is around ensuring equity and access, not only to infrastructure grant funding dollars, but to services across the state for all populations. And then consistency in implementation of the ADRC model, again, allowing for some local flexibility. And then the third guiding principle was around enhancing collaboration and integration. And that is both in the across the local core and extended partnership networks, but as well as between, the state and the local networks. So those, that goal, outcomes, and guiding principles for the business plan are across each of the top of these, really encompass the whole business plan. So in terms of governance administration, the goal here, or the recommendation or goal we're trying to achieve on governance and administration over the 5-year period is have shared state governance structures and community-driven planning approaches that guide scaling of ADRCs across the state. The first recommendation is, I lost my document here for a second. The first recommendation is to further define, formalize, and elevate the role of the Department of Rehabilitation and ADRC governance to reflect the vision of shared partnership across the aging and disability networks. And, as is embedded and contemplated in the state enabling legislation. The second, and I'm going to take these one at a time, is around building a detailed statewide expansion plan that incorporates lessons learned from designated and emerging ADRCs that already exist today, including multi-county ADRCs might have some lessons learned, and then embedding, expansion, having expansion really driven by flexible community-driven planning approaches. In terms of elevating or increasing the visibility of the role of DOR in this shared partnership, some of the sub-recommendations were around strengthening the visibility of DOR to facilitate relationship building among core partners, provide more regular opportunities to convene a broader set of state partners that serve ADRC consumers. And this is in addition to the convenings, the forthcoming convenings of the No Wrong Door Leadership Council. So, really bringing in some other state agencies that do serve ADRC consumers, whether it's DHCS or others. There's obviously many that do. So really having some broader opportunities for collaboration. And then potentially creating a time-limited or even ongoing, if it makes sense, series of the state agency partners to foster cross-agency champions for the ADRC model. So some recommendations in that area. On the second one, Wilson mentioned earlier that this is really a high-level roadmap to statewide expansion of the ADRC model in this business plan. So, one of the next steps will need to be to develop statewide expansion approaches in partnership with core partners, including counties, and really making sure that they are community-driven planning to get to that statewide expansion. So as part of that, partnership building, community-driven planning approaches for expanding the ADRC model statewide. One, opportunity to consider, which is embedded in the sub-recommendations, is around developing and implementing a phased approach or an incremental approach to getting to statewide expansion could be part of the plan. And really, again, that community-driven planning approach in conjunction with stakeholders, developing strategies for expansion of ADRCs in rural areas of the state. That could include multi-county approaches, but really should take kind of best practices and lessons learned where there are other multi-county approaches. I'm going to do both of these and then stop if that's okay. The next business plan component is partnerships. The goal at the end of this is to have consistent engagement and shared learning for core, extended, and state partners to enhance consumer experience and service delivery. The first recommendation is to create or enhance existing forums to strengthen core partnership relationships and ADRC partnerships. And the second is really developing network building guidance. And here's another area we can talk specifically about the role that the role that certain agencies that serve kids and their families can be part of the extended partnership network of ADRCs. Those are the two high order partnership recommendations. And then underneath each, the first is again around creating or enhancing existing forums to strengthen the partnerships. This goes again to that cross-learning opportunity idea someone mentioned earlier. So providing forums, whether, you don't always have to create new forums, it could be embedded into existing forums, and developing training materials to support cross-learning opportunities to strengthen core partner cultural understanding, relationships, and opportunities. And potentially, we've heard this, a call for this a couple times actually, hosting an ADRC conference and providing additional technical assistance sessions to workshop enhanced partnerships and provide applied examples of local network development. Again, I think both of those, the training materials and training opportunities, technical assistance sessions, and local network development really is an area that we can add more content around agencies and entities serving kids and their families. In terms of developing guidance on network partnerships, there are inventories already, I think, that many of the ADRCs have about who their partners are, both core and extended. So refining those and adding, more of the extended partner information in there around the consumer entry points, and then developing more detailed messaging on the specific intersections of the entire system, how the ADRC system fits in with the health plans, the master plan on aging, really, so there's like unified and clear messaging around the role of ADRCs in not only the aging and disability networks, but the state's broader healthcare and social service support system. I will stop there. I know that was a little long.
Thank you, Stephanie. And so we have, and let me just reiterate. So what we're going to do for the Q&A is keep it right now with committee members and then open it up for public comment afterwards. So I see Ramon with your hand up.
Thank you. I think it's great, the organizational sort of concept you have there, breaking down silos. I was listening to the Little Hoover Commission hearing on this matter a couple of weeks ago, and one of the members kept saying, who's the five-star general over this whole thing? And which sounded to me like a good question. So hopefully at some point you might incorporate an answer to that question in your outline.
I don't know if Mark, you want to weigh in on anything. I know there's, a No Wrong Door Leadership Council getting up and running, but it's, I do understand the question.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, when you look at the ADRC specifically, I can't say that there's one five-star general. There's actually two, which would be both DOR and NCDA. in terms of overseeing the structure and planning. Everything's done in collaboration with one another, since it's both aging and disability. And when we do set up the No Wrong Door system, it's definitely going to be a collaborative effort again between aging and disability. So again, we're seeing the prime partners to be CDA and DOR.
Other questions, comments, follow-up on the governance and administration and partnerships components of the business plan? Not seeing any hands. I guess one, and just following up on Ramon and Mark's comments, how will this business plan be integrated or synced with the No Wrong Door advisory council? What is the interface? I love the idea of elevating DOR in the ADRC strategy. And then I guess similarly, my question is, at the No Wrong Door Advisory Council, does CDA and DOR have a role? And what does that look like? Just structurally, a lot to work out and build upon based on the recommendations.
Yeah, that's a great question, a great point, Eli. And I was going to start to address that in my closing comments as well after this presentation, which is we really see the same alignment at the No Wrong Door State Leadership Council level, that the prime partners are CDA and DOR, since it's an aging and disability No Wrong Door system. And so we will have several other partners at the table, of course, with the Leadership Council. But in terms of driving agendas, creating work and assembling strategy, we do see that as a partnership between CDA and DOR as well.
Great, thank you, Mark. And Ramon.
Yeah, and when that question was asked at the hearing last week or 2 weeks ago, the answer was Mark Golly. So because there's 12 departments inside Health and Human Services, which do include both DOR and aging, but then Medicaid seems to be a program that is kind of hard to separate out from all these discussions. So probably something that should be thought about more is how to integrate all the relevant state departments.
It's a great point too, Ramon, because and I'm glad that and I heard the hearing as well, that Mark Kelly was designated as the 5-star general. And it's true, because when you think about the day-to-day work operationalization of an ADRC and of a state No Wrong Door system, your core partners are going to be CDA and DOR. We're going to be the ones taking the lead. Mark Galley, as the agency secretary, ultimately does have that accountability to make sure that the system is in place and that it is functional and operational. And if the core partners have any issues with securing other partners or structuring or setting up the system, it would be the secretary that we'd go to. So that's a great point.
Other comments, feedback from the advisory committee on components A and B? Anna.
Yeah, I'll just add in, thank you. Since we are talking about DOR and our partnership with the ADRC, we do work very closely with CDA, and we're having continual conversations about this very topic. So do appreciate this being included in the business plan, and there's always room for improvement and kind of deepening and continuing our coordination and collaboration. There's a lot that we do with CDA on the ADRC piece. And I just kind of want to mention that we really do see ourselves as in kind of this kind of state core partner around ADRC, and work very collaboratively with CDA on various aspects, whether it is state designation, reporting, funding, how the programs are expending the funding, to development of agendas for the various meetings that we all participate in. So really appreciate it. I think that all of us are very committed to ensuring, right, that it's aging and disability, and that we have the correct and appropriate representation. So just wanted to throw that in, that we do really see ourselves as that core partner on the state level on this initiative.
Anna, thank you so much. Other comments on these first two items? Then, not seeing any, Stephanie, we'll go back to you.
Thank you. And I'm going to quickly turn it to my colleague Zarin, who's going to go through the next two components.
Thank you. We'll talk about funding and capacity building as items C and D of the business plan. In terms of funding, we have 4 recommendations under the funding goal, which is overall in the next 5 years to ensure that the ADRC funding model provides program stability, sustainability, and expansion. And first and foremost, to be able to do that, we need to quantify the investment required for statewide expansion. So we know it's a little more than $10 million, but what is kind of the high end of it? What is if our goal is to ensure that every county in the state has access to ADRC programming, what is the financial envelope required to be able to deliver on that promise? So we envision in the first year of the business plan that there would be some financial projections and around the minimum budget required to support this effort. The second recommendation is to support the technical changes on the infrastructure grant funding allocation methodology. The ADRC team is in progress of reviewing the grant funding allocations. So the recommendations within this item all center around ensuring that there's an appropriate feedback loop process for local partners to provide input into the new methodology, addressing principles of fairness, equity, sustainability, ensuring technical assistance as the new funding methodology gets rolled out, and in general, providing support in the implementation efforts as the funding methodology is being rolled out in the next 5 years. The third item is related to the first two, but slightly different. This is now we're shifting into how do we describe the value and return on investment associated with the ADRC model. As you know, a collaboration model is very intuitive in concept, but it can be hard to quantify. So as we think about the business case for the investment that the state is making on ADRCs, how can we tell that story a little bit more crisply? And so the work in this third recommendation centers around developing an ROI framework and conducting a quantitative analysis to then create communication materials that tell the story of value when it comes to the ADRC model. And lastly, the fourth recommendation under the funding stream is around revenue diversification. In particular, the ADRCs have piloted Medicaid administrative claiming activities in 2022. So building on these pilots, and also building on just the conversation we had about Mark Ghali and Department of Health and Human Services, Department of Healthcare Services, ensuring the linkages with Medicaid where possible, and also exploring other revenue diversification opportunities. We do know there are pockets of partners across the state who are particularly savvy when it comes to revenue diversification. So there's also, above and beyond the Medicaid administrative claiming, there's a component of learning from each other on fiscal practices and sustainability when it comes to revenue diversification. And I'll go to capacity building really quickly, and then once again, we can pause for comments and questions. In terms of capacity building, the goal here is to strengthen service delivery through peer supports, best practice sharing, technical assistance. And the first item under capacity building and supports is around the designation criteria. So the ADRC Bureau and team, in addition to the grant funding allocation methodology, is revisiting the designation criteria. And there will be a component here of ensuring that we've got the feedback loops associated with the designation criteria as it gets redesigned, and ensuring that local partners can provide input into the process. So that's work to be completed in the next 5 years. And all with the goal of addressing challenges and that operational challenges that ADRCs might currently face in terms of administrative challenges, in terms of making it easier to collect data. So the first set of work is around the designation criteria. And then the second set of work is around the state level ADRC training objectives, which have been developed, and translating those into training standards that support the designation status. So it flows through from the first recommendation. And the third capacity building and support recommendation is around technical assistance, in particular for counties that don't have ADRCs, and also for existing ADRCs, and ensuring that the programming is really targeted and into what is most needed. So I'll pause there and see if there's any comments from the group in terms of these two buckets of recommendation.
Okay, Ramon.
Yeah, I think it'd be great if you build a budget for the ADRCs up from what population requires how many counselors and how much should that counselor be paid, plus all the support costs that go with that counselor's work. And my suspicion is you get a number a lot bigger than 10 million. So I hope when you build up the budget calculation that you work all the way up from the ground to what the needs are, to the people that have to be there to fill them, to what the big number would be.
Absolutely. And I believe there's already been some data collection and piloting efforts around this in terms of what is the actual, as we follow the population and the service provision, if we were to scale that, what would that look like? And what are the costs at the service level? So that is certainly one area of analysis in the financial, that first bullet, C1.
So following up on your remark, so Manat is not going to do any of that calculation. It'll be CDA that will do the calculation.
In the future, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and just to clarify on that point, we may hire a consultant to help us build this new funding model, and what we're really looking at is a workload-based methodology. So Ramon is spot on. It's really a matter of looking at what the demand is, so the volume of services, how long it takes to perform each one of those services, whether it's a transition or counseling, and what the cost per worker is. And I think that's really the best way. That's how other programs do it, like CalWorks or CalFresh. They use these workload-based methodologies. As your volume increases, assuming your widgets are correct going in, your cost per worker and the length of time it takes to accomplish certain tasks, then you're really just looking at volume projections, and then it'll tell you what your budget should be.
Thank you, Mark. Darlene?
Yes, thank you. I wonder if there might be some opportunity to engage and involve student interns from universities who might be able to provide some assistance through hours that they have to render in learning about whether it's technical work or whether it's communication work in the capacity building component of this plan.
Great thought.
Yeah.
Thank you, Darlene. Other comments, input from the advisory committee on both funding and capacity building and supports?
I have a question regarding the return on investment and the pilot study. Was there any thoughts, ideas of the components of that pilot to try and capture that information?
This is Wilson. We don't have anything going on at the moment, so I think when we do proceed with that project, then we would, those are the elements that we have to look at, like what goes into a that case to develop a business case or a return on investment case.
Yes, Ramon.
One comment from the Manat folks, which what Darlene said, there's California State University campuses all over California. I mean, it's quite the resource, not to mention our community college system and so on. So that could be a very valuable resource that could be plugged in and would also then work out from the students' point of view in terms of their careers. Because we're going to need a lot more counselors.
Great. Yeah, Wilson.
Would like to, this is Wilson again, would like to make another comment about, so on the topic of funding.
Mhm.
I acknowledge that I did misspeak earlier about the ADRC infrastructure grant funding. And so ADRC's purpose is to provide, navigation and access services, including those 4 service functions to all people of all ages and disabilities. So essentially this business plan is really, again, expand ADRCs to be able to provide those navigation access services to all ages and abilities. I think earlier when I was speaking my hesitation was just saying that ADRCs provide children's services. I think that's the part I did want to clarify, because I think that it's a pretty loaded term when we say children's services, especially when it comes like state programs and services. But just want to again clarify that ADRCs, we do serve those of all ages and disabilities.
Thank you, Wilson. Other comments, feedback on this? Going once, going twice. Okay. Let's keep it going. Zarin or another.
Yep, that would
colleague
be me,
from
Caroline.
Manat?
Hi, everyone. And I just wanted to say too, I think we can be really intentional as we redraft some of these items, especially in the context setting, to be very, just a lot more crystal clear about the broad diversity of consumers that are served under ADRCs. And I think maybe we got a little trip, we tripped ourselves up, Manat, in terms of the first line of the report focusing on the demographic inflection point for older adults in 2030. So we'll look back with that lens. I think that certainly wasn't the intention to keep it narrow. I also wanted to mention that in the appendix, we list kind of example extended partners. And I think we can kind of do a reframe in terms of looking at the broad variety of extended partners that serve children and youth too, in terms of that critical referral piece. So thank you so much for your comments on that front. But we will, for now, move to the 2 last sections that I know we want to get to public comment as well. So on information systems, the goal here would be to develop an IT architecture that integrates ADRC data for AAAs and ILCs, ultimately to improve person-centered navigation and no wrong door systems and monitor performance. So we know that, to date, the information systems that exist for ADRCs are really focused on supporting data collection with regards to reporting and meeting the designation criteria and maintaining the designation criteria. And in tandem, the state is in early stages of refining and implementing a data strategy that can ultimately monitor performance, quality, and outcomes, and that can be leveraged to support the statewide expansion. So the 4 core top line recommendations are as follows. First would be to create a program monitoring dashboard and performance improvement methodology, and ensuring that the data availability and quality is there to reliably calculate those metrics consistently over time. So some of those pieces would involve moving from utilization-based to performance-based and outcomes-based measures to be really clear about identifying gaps in services and then ultimately advancing new policy design. 2 is developing a comprehensive monitoring approach that includes consumer experience data that is validated with the core partners. We know that the consumer experience survey, I think, is being, we're contemplating how to expand that potentially in the next year. I believe the pilot was earlier in 2023. So that's a component of that too, in terms of capturing all of those measures correctly. 3 would be focusing on reducing the administrative burden associated with some of the manual data entry, potentially kind of duplicative reporting in certain cases, and prioritizing the consumer intake process through that lens of kind of a consumer-driven approach to accessing services. And then 4 would be creating reports and dashboards potentially to be shared with core partners that could be a useful benchmark towards state expansion goals. The second goal here is on developing an easy-to-use customer relationship management system that gathers aging and disability data from multiple systems to enhance both the consumer and core partner experience and enable a holistic assessment of the needs of older adults, persons with disabilities, including children and youth, of course, and caregivers. So as part of that, a pre-step would be really evaluating the business case for the contact center that is being contemplated, the web portal, and really refining kind of the consumer and business needs there, potentially conducting research on other contact centers and IT solutions from ADRC programs in other states to inform that model. 2 would be convening a set of stakeholders and IT staff to really discuss the business requirements and system requirements associated with ADRC specific needs under that broader IT solution. And then once those are achieved, would be focusing on kind of developing that common intake process, the common info under the guidance ultimately of the No Wrong Door Leadership Council, with the goal of streamlining service activation for consumers. And then these 2 pieces, the 3 and 4 under information systems, are a bit longer term. So we're focusing on 2, the consumer facing initiatives, the consumer contact center, the web portal to improve person-centered navigation of these services. And the last one would be longer term in terms of the goal of kind of thinking about interoperability among partners in ADRCs. Broader than that, thinking about interoperability and data exchange with extended partners and other state agencies to support the broad set of stakeholders serving the ultimately what will be the new No Wrong Door system. So in our meetings, stakeholders really emphasize the need for continued collaboration, of course, with DOR and DHCS to ensure that the new information systems will meaningfully enable interoperability among state agencies that serve ADRC consumers. And then 2, as part of that, really see an opportunity to plug into the Cal HHS data exchange framework for broader interoperability. And for those that aren't familiar, the data exchange framework is a first ever statewide data sharing agreement whose goal is to accelerate and expand the exchange of health information among a very broad set of entities in terms of healthcare, government, social service programs, and that is beginning in 2024. So seek an opportunity to think, more longer term about how the design of the current systems that is being built up and layered for ADRC consumers and broadly across CDA and DOR, that we do have these other opportunities in mind. Great. And then lastly, for communications, the goal here would be to develop a well understood vision and value proposition, dovetailing on both what we teed up in the partnership section, as well as the ROR framework, really in the funding section as well, to kind of crystallize this value proposition to the local community, and as part of the state no wrong door system that is really consistently messaged to existing and prospective partners as well as consumers. So the two lenses here would be communications focused on entities serving ADRC consumers, so from CDA to the core partners and between core and extended partners, focusing on the business case with core and extended partners, developing marketing tools to core and extended partners to reinforce some of the standardized messaging, and really kind of leveraging the existing materials that local ADRCs already share among themselves and their extended partners. And two, the second communications recommendation is really focused on strategic communications for consumer specific messaging about the model, and how they can learn more about what can, how to access, what types of services are available, and what the needs, how their needs can be addressed through the ADRC model. So that's prioritizing outreach that obviously improves the consumer experience with very simple, accessible messaging, kind of having a lens of avoiding technical jargon to meet the needs of consumers and caregivers. And a lot of that, I think, will be informed with the forthcoming consumer experience survey in the next year. And then another piece that we recommended too is focus groups, potentially on user experience, to really continue to surface those unmet needs and expand consumer awareness of the model. So with that, we could solicit feedback from a diverse set of existing and prospective consumers, so ones that aren't currently served in a county that has an ADRC. So those with and without access to ADRCs, and really in doing so, comparing how, as the state contemplates the vision for person-centered practices in the ADRC model via the no wrong door system, really kind of having a consistent feedback loop with how is that aligning with the reported consumer experience along the way. So those are the key top line recommendations on those two. Opening it up for feedback, comments, questions.
So I see Ramon's hand up. I just want to follow up on one piece. So what I didn't really see explicitly called out in both the information systems and communications was kind of the communication, the integration with managed care. I think it's kind of implied somewhat in the data exchange framework, but particularly locally, when many ADRCs are many ADRCs or specifically AAAs and ILCs are looking at CalAIM and contracting or have already contracted. It just seems like an essential piece is going to be working both, locally at, synchronizing information systems with managed care at the local level. And then, in terms of the communication pieces, really, using the ADRC and the value proposition we create with the ADRC as a tool to further develop partnerships with managed care. So I'm just wondering about ways that we can more directly build managed care into both the information systems and communications, or if that's already been discussed, where that's landing for you, Carolyn.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think we kind of segmented that piece, the managed care, and really particularly the opportunities with CalAIM in the funding section. I think we just didn't properly carry over kind of the narrative there to how that's translating in these contexts. So I think that's a really important point. So we'll be sure to call that out more explicitly about that key opportunity to track across those sections. But for right now, it was really just focused on, I think actually the partnership section too. So partnerships and funding, but we will carry that over to these sections.
Awesome, thank you. And then Ramon, you had your hand up.
Thank you. So on data gathering regarding outcomes, are you thinking about just how many people got their call answered or how many people got the service they needed? Because I think it's really important in tracking outcomes. If people need respite care or people are having trouble with housing costs, that there be some kind of record as to how we're doing on that. Because I think those are some of the big questions in terms of, you know, where our long-term care system is going. And the other thing is, I had suggested standard intake forms when I first got on this committee, and I was told that an entity called CHARM, Customers Holistic Aging Relationship and Management, was going to handle that. And I haven't heard you mention CHARM. So is there some effort to coordinate with that entity and also some thought about a standard intake form?
I can respond to
Sadia,
that.
go ahead.
Yeah, I can respond to that. Those questions, Ramon. Absolutely. So the client relationship management system that's referenced under information systems on this slide, that is CHARM. So CHARM will house information for multiple different programs. That's really the vision and the goal, so that we can have a holistic overview of aging and disability data in one place. That's the vision. But CHARM is a system. So when you talk about an intake form, there could be a component of CHARM built out where you do have that intake form embedded within it that caseworkers would use. However, you could also have the intake form without the CHARM system. So realistically, CHARM system's probably 3 years away. But we do want to look at creating a standardized intake form as part of the No Wrong Door system effort among all of our partners. So, you know, assessing what's a person's needs. If they identify certain needs, it may trigger the need for other types of services or related services. So that's what we really want to get to with that sort of like standard intake form. But I do want to distinguish that from a standardized like program eligibility or assessment form, right? So while the intake form might say this person could use nutrition service or legal services or IHSS, we're not going to attempt to like assess somebody for IHSS. We would refer them to IHSS, and then IHSS would go through their process. There was an attempt several years ago to create what's called the universal assessment form. That effort collapsed because it just got so complicated trying to weave everybody's individual assessment needs into one form. It became pretty unwieldy. So at this stage, we're just looking at a standardized intake. What are those services that people need? And then through an ADRC or through a No Wrong Door system, you do warm referrals and handoffs to those other programs.
I'd like to say something about that. So in regard to, I think that everyone's always wanted to have a system in which the people don't have to repeat over and over again what it is to each of the service providers. But one of the problems with creating an assessment like that are the needs of the federal programs. So each federal program has its particular things that it wants you to collect, and the state's not in control of cleaning that up. So that's really, it turns into a nightmare after a while.
Yeah, and a great point, Rita. And then there's also the issue of what data certain programs are eligible to see or eligible to receive. So that was also one of the issues with this sort of universal assessment form concept.
And an example of that is alcohol and drug programs. They're not allowed to share. Now, you can't share people's alcohol and drug stuff. So, you know, one of the most important things
comes up all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
Cindy, were you gonna say?
I was, but I'm changing subjects. So I want to
Okay.
make sure that Mark's done.
Oh, I'm done. Yeah, thanks.
So I just wanted to, and I appreciate seeing the building out marketing templates and associated branding guide. I think it might be worth making sure, I think having language that is used across everything is going to be really important because we all identify ourselves in different ways. Some of us do use ADRC within titles, others do not. And so I think figuring out what that messaging looks like will help. Branding is everything, right? Branding isn't just one thing. It includes every time you have a conversation. So I think some of those conversations are really important as well.
Absolutely. Other comments, feedback from the advisory committee? On items on information systems and communications? Okay, back to Manat.
Well, I was going to hand it to Mark for closing remarks here, but just wanted to say, echoing Stephanie's comments, we're so grateful to have had the opportunity to work with you all, both with the sustainability work group and all of the various stakeholders, including our wonderful partners at CDA. So thank you for the opportunity. It's been really wonderful.
I'd like to say something about that. So I'm really amazed that Manat has been able to do as well with capturing all of the feedback that the stakeholders have been giving. This is making something that is so complex understandable for us and for the public. I think this can go a long way in generating good feedback.
Absolutely. Mark, over to you.
Oh, well, thank you all. And I first want to return the compliment to Manat because they have been such collaborative partners. And I have been amazed. I mean, I know that they have background in, health and HCBS services, but the fact that they're able to take all this information in, assimilate it so quickly and put it together in a very easy to read and informative report, just so thankful that they were partners with us on this project. Also, again, want to thank Joe and Larry and Rita and everybody who served on the sustainability committee for all their valuable feedback. They spent a lot of time going through the recommendations, providing additional perspectives, and really building out this report to make sure it was fully comprehensive. The core exec team also provided great input and feedback, as well as this committee. So I just want to thank everyone for your engagement, your time, your attention, your thoughtfulness. I think we've built out a really strong plan. Obviously, the next steps will be how do we implement this plan? And just from a sort of like CDA department system-wide perspective, what we're really looking at right now is we've got 3 different efforts that have been kind of referenced, I think indirectly in this conversation, that all kind of like support and complement one another. So we have our CA 2030 effort, which Eli and Carol and Rita and others on this group, Victoria, have been involved in to strengthen the AAA network specifically. And when you look at the ADRC business plan, a lot of what we're talking about here when it comes to training, communication, IT systems, funding, that all translates into the AAAs as well. So we're really trying to see how can we leverage this work to also benefit the CA 2030 process as well. I think there's a lot of great opportunities. And then, of course, we've talked about the no wrong door system. So how does the no wrong door system and ADRC kind of interface and interact? And I could see them like tying together beautifully. When you look at the enhanced INR function of ADRCs, that's exactly what your no wrong door system intends to accomplish. When, at a high level, the no wrong door system will include AAAs and ILCs, but so much more than that. Housing agencies, IHSS, just any services that could possibly benefit an older adult that may not be under the direct authority or purview of the ILCs, AAAs, but that folks also need as well. So we want to establish that sort of like statewide system. And then, to those services and activities that apply to AAAs and ILCs, really leverage that enhanced INR function to understand their needs better and to come up with a good sort of like case management portfolio of what we can do to help those individuals as well. So that's kind of how we're seeing in a broad way how the 3 efforts tie together. But we are going to try to integrate these different efforts even closer together over the coming months. So just want to provide that. But yeah, thanks again to everybody. These conversations have been fantastic.
Mark, thank you so much. And I echo everything that you just said and others. And just again, you know, I want to point to our guiding principles, which I really, really appreciate. Ensuring equity and consistency, enhancing collaboration and integration, and balance, flexibility, and standardization. It feels like those are absolutely, you know, the overarching principles that we use to do this work and to better lift up our community. So we are a little over, but we're gonna, Cindy, pass it to you for public comment.
I'll take it. So, opening it up for public comment now for any, those who had not had a chance or not part of the council have a chance to weigh in here. Unless, of course, you're starving and have nothing to say. Okay. Well, then seeing no hands raised, it looks like we will break for lunch. So I have that it is 11:31. So if we're back here in an hour, and we'll get started by 12:31. Okay, thank you.
Oh, it's recording. Okay, great. Sorry, the chili Riano is settling, moving slowly. Yes, welcome back to the ADRC Advisory Committee. Great discussion before lunch around the business plan, and really as follow-up and very much in alignment, we are going to talk about the California 2030 steering committee and strategic plan. And we have our Director of California Department of Aging, Susan Damaros, to discuss this. So Susan, welcome, great to have you. And the floor is yours.
Thank you, Eli, and hello, everybody. Hope you just had a nice lunch break. And I'm so glad I get to follow the business plan. I'm sure that was a stimulating conversation. We've got some slides that we're going to share with you. You are the first to see this slide deck, and I think our team's going to pull those up for me. Also, this is my first chance to congratulate Wilson on his promotion in front of an audience since we've been together. And I'll thank the rest of our team too in the ADRC Bureau, and Mark Beckley, who's been instrumental to this California 2030 work that we'll be showing you here in a moment. And I'll just stall a little longer, and I'll also thank, there's a slide that will thank them, but we have 3 members of the California 2030 Steering Committee represented on the ADRC Advisory Committee. Michael Costa, Eli, and Victoria all have served on the steering committee since it was formed about a year ago.
And Rita as well.
Oh, is Rita on here too?
Yep, she
I
was
didn't
at the
know
meeting
that.
earlier, but she stepped away.
Okay, great. I didn't see her name represented here. All right, excellent. So there's a great crossover.
The deck available unless Wilson, your team wants to do it, but I'm happy to share.
We're getting it queued up, Susan.
Okay, sounds good.
Oh,
thank you. All right, thank you so much. And this slide deck was produced by our partner in the work, Collaborative Consulting, and many of you may have been interviewed for this project or for the ADRC SWOT analysis that they also did for us. So they prepared these slides and we're sharing them here with you today. So we'll go ahead and move to the next slide. And this is one of the fancy ones that shows, we'll go ahead and scroll through all of the purpose of the California 2030 project, which is, the name is just CA 2030, which is our state, California, And we're looking out to the year 2030 when 1 in 4 Californians will be over the age of 60 and representing about 10.8 million Californians. And so we're looking ahead as part of our master plan for aging is how can we equip the aging network for that inevitability. And we've got a few, and here are the approaches that, we'll go back. So we're using 4 approaches here. We formed a steering committee to lead the work, and you'll see on an upcoming slide representing C4A, CFILC, the California State Association of Counties, the County Welfare Directors Association, and the California Commission on Aging. All had representation on that. We started by understanding the current state of the network and then envisioning an ideal future state. We are approaching the phase of the work where we will be testing scenarios for a future-ready California Aging Network. And then we will develop actionable recommendations at the end of this year for the network to consider. So this will come to CDA as recommendations from the steering committee, and we will consider it alongside other departments and our stakeholder community. Next slide. So you can see here it started a little over a year ago in August with phase 0. We're now in phase 7 and moving into phase 8. For this month, we're synthesizing all of the stakeholder inputs, and collaborative consulting is starting to develop scenario planning for us, all of which will be shared with the steering committee. And we're eagerly awaiting the results from California's first statewide community assessment survey of older adults, the CASA. Next slide. This is a list of our steering committee members. So again, we're very pleased that so many members of this advisory committee are also included. And I hope they've provided you with updates along the way. And if they haven't, you'll hear it all today. Next slide. One of the first exercises we did as a steering committee is it was really important that this work be grounded in older Californians today and in the future. And we developed project personas. This is something that the steering committee generated. We talked about, these are sort of an amalgamation of real people that we know, clients that have been served, consumers, neighbors, and we spend time thinking about how all of these decisions might impact these individuals. So there's a lot. I won't expect you to spend any time on this now, but when the slide deck is shared with you, I really think, it was touching that many of these people are representative of people in our own lives. Next slide. So this breaks down the work in a different way. We are right now, these are all the pieces of work that have concluded. Stakeholder perspectives, AAA stakeholder perspectives, promising practices, and trends and projections. The only missing piece is there at the bottom, the CASOA data. And we have hosted webinars as each piece of the stakeholder work concludes. We've held standalone webinars to share out those results. And what I'll be sharing with you today is really the compilation of all of those phases. Next slide. Oh, there we go. This gives you a sense of our stakeholder work today. We're so pleased that we've engaged with 253 stakeholder voices, many on this very advisory committee. We have connected with all 33 area agency on aging directors. Many of those meetings were held in person, and most of them included a large number of their staff, maybe some of their local advisory committee members, other stakeholders from their communities. We've gathered a lot of local, state, and federal perspectives, and we've talked to all of the steering committee members. Next slide. Again, a lot of words, but if you were one of the interviewees, these were the questions that were asked of you. And it really, you know, in designing this project and leading this initiative, I can't say enough good things about collaborative consulting, and their approach and their style is really helping us assess the current environment, but really help us think into the future. And by their design, the questions that we were asked, these were asked of all stakeholders, so that informed the stakeholder feedback that is available in reports. So here's what we learned. This is really the body of the work as we sit today, 1 year in. We have a really good sense of current and future trends. We better understand the current state of the California Aging Network. The steering committee has developed traits for a future-ready California Aging Network, and we're starting to contemplate options for action to achieve a future-ready aging network. Next slide. So here are the trends, and I think for all of you here, these are familiar, but you might see them phrased differently. The population, as we well know, is becoming older. Older adults are more diverse. Consumer desires and preferences are evolving. Care needs are increasing in complexity as we see a rise in dementia, mental and behavioral health, and multiple comorbidities. And the intersectionality of aging and disability is growing, and this advisory committee knows that best. Throughout the report, you'll see quotes from members of the stakeholders who were interviewed. So you'll see here, we won't spend time on those because you're all going to get the slide deck, but that really, I just love the quotes, and we have lots more in the reports, and I'll be sure to share the link with you. We have a California 2030 site set up where all of this is available. Next slide, please. Oops, we'll go one back for another slide about trends. There we go. There we go. Older adults will face greater social and health vulnerabilities. We see that today, and that trend is projected to only increase. We know the housing crisis, the climate crisis. Below that, we know about the caregiving crisis, whether it's paid or unpaid informal family caregiving and friend caregiving. The integration of health and social services is growing. We see that through CalAIM and the social determinants of health. We also are seeing that in Medicare and in the VA system. Challenges in accessing services will persist. Preparation for the aging demographic has strong political and public will, and advanced technologies offer threats and opportunities for consumers. So here I like this upside down view that they did, that the really trying to how we can wrap our heads and our hands around a larger population with more complex needs and unique preferences going forward. And then layering on top of that, the vulnerabilities that this population are facing today in terms of housing and homelessness, caregiving shortages, climate change, and how that's going to be with us well past 2030. Next slide. So in our assessment of the California Aging Network, which for purposes of this project is limited to the 33 area agencies on aging, right off the top, the network has valuable strengths and assets that came through in every piece of our work. The network has been receiving greater attention. This started with the governor's master plan for aging and certainly throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. older adults and community supports were more of a focus. Funding is a constant concern. Many AAAs feel hidden in their communities. Some policies and practices may be hindering AAA's performance. There is significant variation across the California Aging Network. Geography and demographics are critical drivers of that variation. Each AAA structure is seen as having distinct advantages and disadvantages. And AAAs operating multi-county planning and service areas experience unique challenges and opportunities. So again, I'm not reading the quotes to you, but I will share that my favorite is the network has evolved, but it has never been designed. And we see that as many of us, the CDA starts to prepare to celebrate its 50th year next year, as PSA 4 is celebrating their 50th anniversary next month. As the Administration on Community Living is updating the Older Americans Act for the first time since the 1980s, we're starting to see movement in the design of the network. Next slide. So I really want to commend the steering committee and collaborative consulting for synthesizing all of this stakeholder input and helping us get to a place where we can point to traits that all of us agree reflect a future-ready California aging network. These are so many of the traits and attributes and values of the ADRC Advisory Committee. We want to be aging and disability forward. I really want to thank Eli. We had started by saying age friendly, and we talked about what we really want to be is age and disability forward. We want to be inclusive and equitable, well-known and accessible, consistent, locally responsive, strategic and action-oriented, performance-based and outcomes-driven, and integrated. Next slide. So here are some of these bullets reflect, these would be direct quotes from stakeholders. They might reflect robust conversations that happened at steering committee meetings. They might be part of the desk research or the promising practices from other states. But what we mean by age and disability forward is to combat negative stereotypes, to build bonds across generations, and to advocate for policy changes at the state and federal levels. Inclusive and equitable, go ahead. It's okay. Feel bad reading these. Inclusive and equitable is really, goal 3 in California's master plan for aging is inclusion and equity, not isolation. So really building off of the California for All credo that we all subscribe to. Well-known and accessible. We heard lots and lots and lots about the need for outreach, promotion, awareness building, marketing, visibility. So that gets to that. Consistent. This is where we really we talk about an aging network. How can we find more commonality and standardization among the 33 AAAs, and how can we promise to consumers and communities and health plans that they'll find a consistent level of service and offerings in their local communities? Next slide. Locally responsive, this is at the heart of the California Aging Network and our AAAs, is to really meet local needs and to match the demand and preferences of their communities and to really reflect the population that they serve. Strategic and action-oriented, really to lean into our role as the principal advocates for older adults, as required by the Older Americans Act, and certainly our vision at the Department of Aging. So to make sure that we're maximizing resources and leveraging resources to the best of our ability, blending and braiding funding streams where possible, to maximize our reach and our impact performance-based and outcomes-driven to really model what's happening in other parts of the health and human services system, to be more performance-based and to have incentives and focus on outcomes in our work, and to be able to report that with good data, and then integrated to really reflect back how individuals meet people where they are, with healthcare needs, with behavioral health needs, with social needs, with housing needs, with transportation needs, and to really do our best to integrate all of the needs of our population. Next slide. So part of this project is looking at other states that have model programs and seeing how they might fit best for California. And I realize this should have been right at the outset, but these are the 6 focus areas of the California 2030 project. We're doing a deep dive on all 6 of these. Governance. So this is how a AAA is governed, whether it's part of a county system, whether it's part of a JPA, a joint powers agreement, or part of a nonprofit. Programs and services. What are all of the programs and services that are offered through the Older Americans Act and the Older Californians Act? Funding sources and capacities. So base funding, Older Americans Act dollars, Older Californians Act dollars, ARPA dollars, ADRC dollars, looking at Medicaid and Medicare and VA as possible funding sources, key performance measures for the programs, branding, communications, and outreach, how we can make these services more readily available and accessible through branding, communications, and outreach, and then our geography and demographics. So really looking at how our state has changed since the time we established our network of 33 AAAs. So I'm looking at the time here. I have one more slide, and then I want to be sure we get a couple questions in. So this gives you a little bit more detail on those 6 core areas. And again, to inform each of those 6 topics, we talked to stakeholders, the steering committee members wrestled with them. We interviewed all 33 AAAs. We looked at other states. We talked to our state and federal partners. And this is these would be some of the key themes that emerged under each of those 6 key areas. And next slide. Again, the key themes that emerged. And we're seeing as we talk and we look at other states, there is movement in other states about with all state units on aging reaching their 50th anniversary this year or next year. Really the system wasn't designed for the population we serve today and the population we'll be serving for the next 50 years. So we're at a key juncture right now to be really assessing and examining how we function as a network. And next slide. This should be the last one. Great. Okay. First time giving this talk. So I want to be sure that there's time for any questions. We can take the slides down now so I can see everyone's faces. And if anybody's got comments or questions they'd like to share. And again, I want to thank everybody here who has been part of the steering committee. Eli, Victoria, Rita, Michael.
Am I on?
You're on.
Okay. This is a very inspiring report. Thank you so much for your hard work. A couple of populations I might suggest also when you're tracking trends. By income, how many people are falling into the forgotten middle? Because that group may be getting much larger in the next 10 years. And that neither Medicaid nor wealth will serve. So that's one population. Another is childless elders, because I did look at some demographics on that, and I can see that the curve is shooting straight up as to how many people are old and don't have children. And because we just kind of assumed for the most part people's children would take care of them. And they have, but if they don't have any, that's certainly an issue. And then languages, because California is still, the leading recipient of immigrants across the United States. And a lot of people don't speak English. I'm just going to add one little story. My grandmother was from Mexico. She came over when she was 5. She learned English. She was the English speaker for the family until she got old. And somewhere around 70 or 75, she forgot English and became a Spanish speaker again. So anybody that dealt with her had to know Spanish. So we're going to have large populations that won't speak English. That's all.
Mm-hmm. You've read the report, haven't you? You're on top of all the trends. And Wilson will share with you a link to all of the summary documents, but you're exactly right. The forgotten middle, smaller families, no children, or children in other states or countries that aren't close by to support. And then language access, the proliferation. Rita, it looks like you have a question.
You're so perceptive. How did you? Well, we at the CCOA meeting, we had a discussion about the CRCs and whether or not the ADRCs are working closely enough with them. Because, obviously the ADRCs will see the primary client, but the caregiver also needs some support. I want to tell you, having read a lot of these types of things and listening to people report on them, that was really an exceptional reporting on your part about making something so simple that's very complicated. So thank you for that. I think that's a part of your reputation. People, making the information accessible. So that's the only thing that came up for me. We had a very good discussion this morning about things that we should maybe look a little closer to with this report. But I think the department and the consultants have done an exceptional job. I mean, really, in all of the departments that I've run, I just see that you've picked some really terrific consultants here. And it's going to make the information so much more accessible to everyone.
Thank you for that, Rita. And we are fortunate that we have the resources that we could bring on collaborative consulting to help to lead this work. We're so fortunate. Darlene, it looks like you have a question. Hi.
Hi, Susan. Thanks so much for your comprehensive and informative presentation. Really appreciated it. I just have 2 questions for your consideration. And one has to do with this evolving information technology that is used now to collect data and help folks get the data quicker and perhaps make the data more useful for themselves. So, there's a lot of things going on in the healthcare system with, telehealth and telemedicine. And I was wondering somewhere in the report moving forward, if there might be an opportunity for ADRC to perhaps look at using some aspects of artificial intelligence and using that software to perhaps help them collect the data and use the information more collectively and quicker, if you will. And then my second question, as you know, I work at San Francisco State University and I represent the 23 campuses in the CSU system now. Is there any opportunity in terms of workforce capacity and labor force development if the ADRCs can draw upon students from graduate or even undergraduate programs to maybe, use them as interns to help them do their work, but also to train our future workforce? I'm just putting it out there for your consideration.
Thank you. That's a great suggestion. And I do know academic partners are referred to at different parts of the report, CSU in particular, where we're thinking, and the community colleges and really re-examining some of the licensure requirements and trying to for information and assistance where so many jobs, social workers might be in short supply, and how can we use other allied health and community health workers to solve the workforce crisis. So that's something we can come back to. Thank you, Darlene. Great. Well, then my closing thought will be, this is just one sliver of our work. This is part of a bigger No Wrong Door system in which the AAAs sit, as in, where the ADRCs sit. Rita, to your point, where the caregiver resource centers sit, the ILCs sit. So this is really focused on the AAA network. Not in isolation, but that has been the focus of that. And so we're really excited to share out at the end of the year the recommendations of the steering committee, and then to embark on, any policy changes, budget changes, legislative changes, and hopefully there will be things that can be done even without that, that are just some improvements that can be made to how we work together as a network and as a department. So thank you, Wilson, for including me on the agenda today. And I appreciate all of your great work as advisors to CDA and DOR. Thank you.
Susan, thank you so much. And thank you for your leadership of the 2030 Steering Committee, and frankly, all things ADRC and No Wrong Door. I feel like, as the No Wrong Door Advisory Council begins to launch, having, as Mark pointed out earlier, the ADRC business plan, the the getting closer to finalized 2030 strategic plan will really set up this bigger and broader work up for success. And so just deeply appreciate your shepherding all of these projects and this important work as we really create a more equitable California. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Eli. Thanks a lot.
Okay, so Cindy.
Okay, so next up is the ex officio partner updates. And because of the presentations today and whatnot, we are kind of shrinking down the presenting for the work groups as well as our partners. So starting with C4A and Michael.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. Good afternoon, everyone. In terms of ADRCs, we have a commitment as C4A and also the individual members for building the sustainability of ADRCs and continuing to kind of progress toward a full statewide system. And we kind of recognize that there's a problem that's still there that hasn't been addressed, which is the $10 million cap on funding. And we also recognize that we can't really, make this all happen unless we do something about that funding level. So we'll be looking at various options over the next year and hoping to work with many of you on that in terms of addressing that. And because we really do believe in the necessity of the ADRCs. So the other thing we're doing right now is we are initiating a couple of other things. We've been for the last year working with collaborative consulting to look at the potential to develop a delivery network related to AAAs and their community partners and managed care, starting with CalAIM, but expanding eventually into Medicare Advantage. And so we're reaching kind of the end of that process of research at this point, and we're looking to make some decisions about our direction forward as an association within the next month. And then also we've kind of been blessed with having some funding that has allowed us to establish a professional training program, a training academy. We kind of go back and forth on the wording of that. But what we really want to do is establish a series of modules, training modules that will actually be, you know, available and used by staff and leadership at the AAAs to really help us do what we do better. And because we're going to be better at what we do with ADRCs, we'll be better at what we do with managed care as folks kind of go through this training program. So I look forward to reporting back on that later. Cindy, did I do it? Am I within the time frame?
You did great, Michael.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks. So next up, we have Calvet and I think David.
Yes, hi. You know, again, I'm just taking notes, so I don't have an update prepared of any type. I was just asked this morning to join the meeting today. So if there's anything you want to ask that I can maybe answer, I'm more than happy to take some questions. I just don't have any type of an update prepared.
Thanks. So I don't know if anybody has any questions. I will leave that open for folks to give them a second.
Actually, I have a
Okay.
So David, this is Eli, and a question. I believe in our previous meeting, you know, it might have been a different meeting as well. So many meetings, but we've talked about veterans directed care as another opportunity to kind of braid or build out funding for, you know, the ADRC and broader no wrong door system. I'm wondering in a future report out if that's something you and the VA can speak to.
What did you call it? Veterans directed what?
Veterans directed care.
Veterans directed care.
Yeah, so it's more prominent on the East Coast. It hasn't really come to the West as far as I understand, but at the US Aging Conference, we learned about it. Many of us did. And it's a model for funding and supporting veterans who are, you know, aging with or into disability, with everything from case management to, you know, assistive technology, caregiving, other healthcare services. So it really it seems like a tremendous opportunity that California hasn't leveraged yet, and many of us in the ADRC network are interested in further exploring this and would like to hear the thoughts of the Veterans Administration on you know, where the department, where Calvet is in this space.
Okay. You know, what I'll do is I'm going to add this to my notes and I'll ask Roberto and or Keith to be prepared to talk a little bit about this during the next meeting. I don't think I have anything of value to add right now on that topic.
Thanks. Appreciate it, David. So next up, and I don't think Carol Lisa joined from the Commission on Aging.
No, Carol's not able to be here today.
Okay. I knew she didn't start. So next up is CDA and Mark.
Yeah, it feels like we've done a lot of updates today, so I think we'll take a pass and just let others have their time.
Oh, sorry, Michael, you missed out. Thanks, Mark. So then
always
next
a problem going first, you know.
So next is the Foundation for Independent Living Centers, Brett.
Hi again, everyone. So I'm going to talk really quick and leave a minute or two for Dan. So lots of exciting things going on for us. We're actually moving our offices to a bigger state that will actually be able to accommodate statewide meetings at our new space. So we're super excited about that. We recently added a new contract with our DDAR Emergency Preparedness Program. So we're now working with SCE as well as PG&E. And we're in a phase of hiring a lot of new talented individuals. So one of the areas we'll be hiring in is our DO network. for community organizing. We're creating a new manager position that will oversee that program as well as our YO program. We had our first in-person statewide meeting in a number of years. With very exciting for me to get to meet a lot of our EDs in person. We had some really robust, great conversations about ADRCs that Eli led, and a good conversation on employment programs. And we're very lucky and fortunate that DOR hosted the event. Thank you again, Anna. And we will be starting again, providing really training and technical assistance for our executive directors. So we'll be scheduling executive director monthly calls soon, and then calls with deputy directors and also staff to really start providing more technical assistance and training. Okay, Dan.
Hi, everyone. Dan Oakenfuss, Public Policy Manager for CFILC. I'll be really quick here. We had a very successful.
Both sound sick. Are you sick, Randy?
Hello? Okay. Am I good?
You're good. I think we just, somebody came off mute and didn't mean to.
Okay. All right.
We got it.
Terrific. We had following our statewide meeting 2 weeks ago, we also had a Independent Living Capital Advocacy Day at State Capitol in person. And we had opportunities for our independent living representatives to meet with their state legislators and talk about independent living and also ADRC partnerships. And I was actually Brett and I were able to attend one meeting that Brandy Buell of RIL Sacramento, and she brought along Pam Miller from the area from her AAA, sorry, and along with Jen Shukuma from also from the partnership. And we all met with Senator Ashby, Angelique Ashby, who's a new senator. She represents Sacramento and Yolo counties. So very successful education effort. And it was an opportunity to showcase the C4A, CFILC partnerships on these issues. So thank you.
Cool. Thank you both. Next up is Department of Healthcare Services. I don't know that anybody is still on. Okay. And then Department of Rehab, Anna.
Great, thank you so much. Let's see, we'll talk a little bit about what the happenings here at the Department of Rehabilitation. Well, there's a lot going on the employment side of things, including California accessing additional funding for employment services, which is really exciting for us. I'm going to focus really on our independent living section for this update. So right now we are currently working with the 28 independent living centers in California to renew their state grants for independent living. We refer to them as the AB 204 grants. So independent living centers right now are working on their 3-year plans for providing independent living services. And we are looking to execute new contracts, grants with them effective October 1st. So just a little background for funding for independent living centers. Independent living centers in California get funding directly through the Administration on Community Living on the federal level. They get approximately $9 million annually through ACL to provide direct core services, federal independent living core services. In addition to that $9 million approximately from the Administration on Community Living, Department of Rehabilitation also administers funding to the 20 independent living centers to provide federal core services as well as state core services. So traditionally over the years and in the current year we're in and about to end, they're on a federal fiscal year. We at the Department of Rehabilitation provide approximately $13 million to the independent living network to provide those core independent living services, both the federal core services and the state core services. That funding comes from state general fund as well as Social Security reimbursement dollars, which I've talked about before at these meetings. The Social Security reimbursement dollars are directly linked to the employment and vocational rehabilitation services that we do at the Department of Rehabilitation, where every time we get someone with a significant disability gainfully employed and off of disability benefits, we do get a reimbursement from the Social Security Administration. That funding can be used to invest in independent living center services, older individuals who are blind programs, or back into our vocational rehabilitation programs. The reason I bring this up is, as been mentioned before, we're actually increasing our funding to independent living centers for fiscal year 23-24. So as mentioned, we traditionally provide about $13 million in those state general fund and Social Security reimbursements. This year, we're adding an additional $6 million, so a total of $19 million that DOR will be administering to the independent living centers, the 28 of them. So if you look at the combined federal funding through the Administration on Community Living and DOR's funding, the Independent Living Network in fiscal year 23-24 will have about $28 million invested into it for this next year. I will just mention that in addition to that $28 million this next year, we also at Department of Rehabilitation administered funding through the State Independent Living Plan in collaboration with the State Independent Living Council. And that investment is includes funding for core services, about another $1 million for independent living center core services, as well as about $360,000 for the independent living centers to use for institutional transition and diversion services. So we are currently in the middle of administering the funding and getting all those grants and contracts executed for October 1st. I wanted to make a note on some of the trends we're seeing with the independent living centers. So actually since COVID, over the time of COVID, we've seen a gradual increase in the number of people served through the independent living centers. And we're continuing to see that trend in the current fiscal year that we're in. Now, I only have data for the first half of federal fiscal year 22-23, but what we're seeing is halfway through this year, we've already seen the independent living centers serve over 3,500 individuals as compared to the number of people they served total in the last fiscal year. So halfway through the year, they've already surpassed the number of people they've served the previous year by over 3,500 people. So halfway through this year, they've served about over 30,300 individuals with disabilities with over 113,000 services. In addition to those direct services that the independent living centers provide, they also provide very comprehensive, extensive other community services and hours related to systems change advocacy, community education, outreach, and technical assistance. So we see that halfway through this year, they've provided almost 34,000 hours of community services. Those again are above and beyond direct services to individuals. We're seeing the number one service being information and assistance. We're also seeing an increase in the number of people who are getting institutional transition and diversion services with over 1,850 goals set related to institutional transition and diversion. So I also wanted to mention just trend-wise that when you look at who the independent living centers are serving, I'm going to focus on the age range for this part, that we see about 2% of the individuals served by independent living centers are under the age of 14. We're seeing about 8% of those that are served are between the ages of 14 and 24 years old. And that's really important to note because one of the core services for an independent living center is youth transition. So independent living centers are asked to support youth with significant disabilities to transition from school and high school to post-secondary education, independent living, and employment. So about 8% of those that we're surveying are within that transition age youth category. Then from there, we have about 44% approximately of people served are from the ages of 25 to 59. So these adults with disabilities, right? And then about 45%, very similar number, are over the age of 60 years old. So that kind of gives you a breakdown of the age categories that the Independent Living Network is serving. I also wanted to take the opportunity to talk a little bit about the collaboration that we're doing with Department of Aging around the ADRC. So right now we actually have Department of Rehab staff are out with Department of Aging staff to conduct site visits for the ADRC site visits. So we're really excited about that, where we have both staff coming together from CDA, Department of Rehab, to go out to local communities. Some of you they've already been to, others they're planning to come and see if you're an ADRC. So we're really partnering on that, on those in-person site visits. Also, as mentioned before, we are working with CDA on the No Wrong Door State Leadership Council development. And I also will mention that we're starting discussions around what some of you may know as the Olmsted Committee, which is now the Disability Aging Community Living Advisory Committee. We're really beginning to work closer with CDA on that particular committee that's so critical, right, to ADRCs, to ensuring people with disabilities and older adults have the opportunity for community living. So we're going to be partnering closer with CDA on supporting that particular committee, which we're really excited about. Also, before I wrap it up, I know I'm taking a lot of time, my apologies. There's a conference coming up October 12th through 14th in Orange County. It's called the April Conference. And if you're in independent living, you may know this, but if not, April is the Association for Programs for Rural Independent Living. They are going to have their annual conference in Orange County again, October 12th through 14th. I highly encourage you all to look up April's website, look at the conference. It'll be a really great conference to attend if that's possible for your organization. They're going to cover a wide range of issues related to independent living, really focused on those rural communities, and really should be a great opportunity to learn more about independent living. There's also a focus on youth with disabilities at the conference as well. Lastly, I'll just mention, most of you probably have been following this, but last week on the federal level, Health and Human Services issued a new proposed rule to strengthen prohibitions against discrimination on the basis of disability and healthcare and human services programs. So there was a big announcement last week, this notice of proposed rulemaking clarifies the application of the Rehabilitation Act, Section 504, and several critical areas specific to disability. One is to ensure that medical treatment decisions are not based on biases or stereotypes about individuals with disabilities. It clarifies obligations for web, mobile, and kiosk accessibility in healthcare. It establishes enforceable standards for accessible medical equipment, and it clarifies a few other areas that are really important around disability. So what we know is a lot of people with significant disabilities have historically had barriers to healthcare due to their disability, whether they didn't have access to accessible equipment or materials that they were in accessible formats. So we're really excited about that. There is a webinar coming up through Health and Human Services next week, September 18th, where more information will be provided. But that proposed rulemaking is currently open for organizations and individuals to provide comments on it. So with that, I will wrap it up and send it back to you, our fearless co-chairs.
Anna, thank you. Don't worry about the time. Mark bequeathed it to you, so you're fine.
Thank you.
So, okay, so next up, and,
Question.
oh, sure.
That was a information packed report. I was taking notes as fast as I could, and I don't think I caught half of what you said. Is there a document or something that you could provide us that summarizes your report?
I will absolutely send it to Wilson and the team over there, and they can put it in the meeting minutes if that works for you.
Thank you. Appreciate that very much.
Anna, thank you. So Eli pointed out to me that I skipped over the Department of Developmental Services. I would like to blame my glasses because I refuse to get used to. They're not even bifocals. I can't even remember what they're called. So I totally skipped. So my apologies. And Department of Developmental Services.
Yes, thank you. And I can quite relate, so no apologies necessary. So I'm here to take notes, but I'm also here to share with you an update. I'm Lucy Ezralou, Senior Psychologist Supervisor out of DDS at its Sacramento office. So DDS continues to collaborate with CDA and the work group members from the State Alliance team. In fact, there is an upcoming meeting on the 27th, September 27th. I guess that's Wednesday, right? From 10 to 2. It will be held at Allenby Building. However, it is a hybrid meeting, so members can attend either in person or via Zoom. And the other update is that we are continuing our efforts to fill the Aging and Inclusion Specialist position. And that's what I have to share.
Thank you. So I also think our friends from Department of Healthcare Services, Juliana, is that you?
Yes, sorry about that. I was actually calling in but unable to mute myself.
You're up.
Alrighty, so I do have an update, and this is about the ALW renewal. So the ALW expires on February 29th, 2024. We do intend to renew the waiver for another 5-year waiver term beginning March 1st, 2024. CMS advised DHCS to only include technical or minor changes in the ALW renewal and use subsequent amendments to make substantive changes. This approach aims to streamline the review and approval process, minimizing the potential for delays in the waiver renewal. DHCS will post the ALW renewal application for a 30-day public comment period on September 5th, 2023. All comments must be received by October 5th. The ALW renewal application and comment instructions are posted on the ALW webpage.
Great. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
And so then last but not least, Independent Living Council.
Hi, everyone. This is Allison, the legislative specialist at the State Independent Living Council. I have a very short update that there is no update at this time, but our next full council meeting will be held virtually in December. So we'll have an update about that later, but that's it.
Great. Thank you so much. I love updates that there are no updates. So I think we've gotten through everything, and I will turn it back over to Eli.
Thank you so much, Cindy. So our next item is the committee work plan progress report outs. So we're going to hear from each of our 3 committees, data and outcomes, excuse me, 3 work groups, data and outcomes work group, the training work group, and sustainability work group. So for the data and outcomes work group, our co-chairs are Elaine Clark and Letty Zuno. And I'd like to call on Elaine and Letty, or Elaine or Letty, to give our update.
Thanks. This is Elaine. I tried to push this off on Letty, but she's not even here today. So anyway, we met yesterday. We had actually a really great meeting. We we've been going over the data reports from the last fiscal year. So it was the last quarterly report, Q4, but it included the data for all 4 quarters. And lots and lots of data. So this was the first draft of the report. And we were looking at and talking about yesterday about how to slice and dice the data a little bit differently, how to show we're going to be going forward looking at how do we take the data that we learned, about the numbers for each of these individual service deliveries, and then combine that with how many clients and how many service units per client, or how many referrals for clients, and then satisfaction survey. So we're going to be looking at how to pull all that together to tell stories that are more than just the individual data points. I will say that they were quite impressive, and even the 6 designated ADRCs for over the years, there was an increase in services to clients for every category. So from fiscal year 19-20 to 22-23. So really impressive numbers. The thing that really stood out to me was the key issues that the ADRCs are facing. Guess what? Housing, transportation, having the services available in order for the ADRCs to make connections and help people get connected. It seems like throughout all of the ADRCs throughout the state, and even with the AAAs, right? We all see these same issues coming forward. So eventually we'd like to create something that actually gives some suggestions as to how to overcome these issues. And then going forward, we're going to be shifting our work and looking at the recommendations from the Manat business plan. And that'll include, how data is collected and how it needs to evolve with each of the ADRCs, including consumer outcomes, as well as, the provision of services. So that's it. If you have any questions, happy to answer them.
Outstanding, Elaine. You did great. Any follow-up from the committee on Elaine's report out? Okay. So next up, we have our training work group, and our 2 co-chairs are Carl Sigmund and Victoria Jump. Wow, that's weird to say that. Victoria, co-chair, training and work group. Carl, Victoria, would love to hear an update.
Yeah, I will be giving the report this time, but before I do, just welcome again Victoria and congratulations again, Cindy, becoming our fearless leader with EI.
Yeah, I'll be giving the report this time, but before I do, just want to welcome again Victoria and congratulations again, Cindy, on becoming our fearless leader with Eli.
So a lot of this report is actually an update on our last report we gave. We continue to support the bill and letting for training that the bill will make to advance staff.
A lot of this report is actually an update on our last report we gave. We continue to support the Bureau in planning for trainings that the Bureau will make available to ADRC staff.
The AF 5 more items that complex with errors box when you and CTR and as I said in my last report, I think it's a great opportunity, especially for individual staff who may not have had some of these trainings before they is using HCBS funds to make them available to local staff. Please spread the word.
CDA is finalizing the contracts with AIRS, Boston U, and CTI. And as I said in my last report, I think it's a great opportunity, especially for ADRC staff who may not have had some of these trainings before. CDA is using HCBS funds to make them available to local staff, so please spread the word.
In your packet about the round table webinars and tools for more announcements on that.
I'm sorry, Carl, I lost you at the end. Then you'll see an update in your packet about ADRC roundtable webinars. Take two what?
Hey, for more announcements on that.
So update in your packet about ADRC roundtable webinars. Stay tuned for more on that.
Victoria, did I miss anything?
Victoria, did I miss anything?
Or any questions?
Or any questions?
Okay, back to the co-chair.
Okay, back to the co-chairs.
Carl, great report out. Thank you. Clearly, you're doing all the heavy lifting for Victoria. I just have one follow-up question, which is on the Boston University CTI training, which is great. I know Marin's ADRC One-Door staff all went through that when it was available. When do we anticipate, and maybe this is for CDA, maybe it's for Carl, when do we anticipate that training being available?
Yeah, before I turn it over to staff, one quick
Yeah, before I turn it over to staff, one quick, say again, Carl.
Alright.
One quick correction.
Echoes talking about yeah, heirs, the Boston, the picture, and the CPR.
We're actually talking about 3 trainings: the AIRS, the Boston U Cater, CADER, and then the CTI.
Thank you.
And
Got it.
then all that.
And then I'll let staff take
This is Wilson. So we don't have an exact date. We're hoping in October. We'll have the trainings be able to get started. Reason we don't have exact date right now, as Carl mentioned, we're going through the contracting process with these 3 vendors. As soon as those contracts are executed and we have a process set up to where we can start registering people to take the trainings and we can get started. Yeah, once it gets started, we have until September of 2024 to take advantage of the trainings and before it expires.
Awesome. Thank you, Wilson. Any other questions for Carl?
Rita.
Rita.
Yeah, what does CTI stand for?
Care Transitions International.
I barely heard that.
Care Transitions Intervention.
Thank you.
I'm so glad someone else answered that. I didn't have the answer. Great.
Home. I got that correct. I think I've been working. A colleague picked me up.
And Rita, that's really our hospital to home transitions. I hope I got that correct. I think I did, but can a colleague back me up?
Thanks, Carl.
Yes, I believe so. Wilson?
Yeah, this is Wilson. I just want to kind of just real quick add on that CTI was previously known as the Coleman model. So for those that are familiar with the Coleman transition service model, but it's a different name because it got bought over by another company. So.
Thank you for that background. That makes sense. Any other follow-up on training work group? Okay. Last but not least, our sustainability work group. I don't believe Joe Cobery is here. So Larry, this is all you.
Yeah, Elaine, I think Joe and Letty must be together because, they both walked out on us. So, I really don't feel I need to give a report. I think Manak did a wonderful report on what we've been doing. So I'll give it back to you. Thank you.
Great. Wilson.
Sorry, this is Wilson. I since we have a little bit of time, I just want to acknowledge that most of the committee's work is done via the work groups that are outside of these meetings. And so I just want to give kudos to each of the work groups and also as well as our CDA ADRC team as well for all the goals and deliverables that they've been accomplishing. So I do encourage, just as a plug for everyone to look at the progress report. We provide updates each meeting because that highlights a lot of our accomplishments to date. So I know our work groups have done a great job of covering it, but I'm sure there's more details that might be in that report as well. So I just want to point that out and kudos and thank you to our work groups and the CDA ADRC team as well.
Seconded. Larry, you have your hand up.
Yeah, real quickly, the one thing I forgot to do earlier in thanking everyone is thanking Wilson. We really couldn't have done what we do in the committee without Wilson. So I just got to give him kudos. And thank you again, Wilson, for everything you do.
Thank you, Larry. I'll pay you later.
I'm looking for the check.
Okay.
All right, yeah.
Public comment. We would love to hear from the public. Questions, answers. Okay, I see no hands. So moving on to the next item.
So summary and action items for Wilson and team.
This is Wilson again. So I have a handful of action items. So one of them is earlier two presentations, one from Manat, one from Susan DeMorris. They have PowerPoint slides, so I'll be sure to, and they sent them over to me, so I'll be sure to share it with the committee. And then secondly, for the finalized 2024-25 meeting calendar, we'll be sending out a copy, also posting it on the website as well to all the members. We'll also be sharing the CA 2030 web link to all the materials that Susan also had emailed to me already. We'll also be sharing the 2023 April conference that Anna had mentioned for October. And so we'll be sending out that information. And lastly, at Ramon's request, we'll be sharing Anna's report out, her talking points for what she had reported out earlier for DOR. Did I miss anything?
I don't think so.
We have a thumbs up in the room. Any other additional thoughts on Zoom? Anything else we want to follow up on? Okay.
Okay. Any ideas, suggestions for agenda items for future meetings? Eli, I wondered about what you brought up with Calvet and maybe
Yeah.
a brief presentation, because it's come up a couple of times now.
Yes. So maybe, CDA team, maybe DOR and Calvet just having a prior even before presenting here, maybe just a general discussion on and some research on veterans directed care, and if it makes sense, if Calvet is interested and ready to have veterans directed care be a focus of a future ADRC advisory committee.
Any other ideas?
This is Elaine. I wonder if, I'm sorry, my camera's acting weird. That's why it's been off today. But I wonder if once the final Q4 report is out from CDA, if people would be interested, people other than just the data work group would be interested in hearing a general overall presentation about the data and the trends. I'm just wondering, I know I'll get it, but I think that people outside the work group might want to hear about it as well. Your
Great
thoughts?
idea, Elaine.
I agree. Yeah, I think actually we should share that at the next or future advisory committee when it's ready.
Yeah, because I crashed the meeting and it was really interesting. So any other ideas?
I just had a question about the material that was presented. I'm my name is Coach and I'm from the Community Resources for Independent Living in Hayward. I'm the ADRC Information and Referral Coordinator. Just wondering where I can find this material, or if I'm able to find it.
For this meeting?
Yes.
It's on the website, isn't it, Wilson?
Yes.
So it's on the department's website, CDA's website.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Great question. Okay, I have another item. We were talking about it on the way back from lunch. They have a really tasty place to eat here. If you all want to come in person. We had great conversation. It was nice. Somebody sparked one thing and then we started talking about other things. So just really encouraging folks to come in person if your day allows you or making space for it. It's nice to have the conversation during lunch, before the meeting, after the meeting. We get to connect again. So it's my plug.
I second it. It was a great lunch, and just the opportunity to connect more in person when we can, when it's safe, for those who feel comfortable doing it. We would love to see you up here.
And it's not hot here anymore.
No, I'm looking at the temperature. It's 83 degrees.
It's great.
It's like Hawaii. No, Hawaii. In Sacramento.
That's a lot like Hawaii. No,
Yeah.
but it's great. Okay. I think that's
Yeah,
it.
so we're moving to adjournment. I do want to just kind of impromptu here, close in memory of a friend, a colleague, a longtime leader in independent living. Lilibeth Navarro passed away earlier this week.
Right.
She was an absolutely incredible human being, really a pioneer of independent living, a pioneer of disability justice as a disabled Filipina leader, woman, coming into independent living and leading independent living at a time when we did not have many women of color, disabled women leading at centers. She was just tenacious in her advocacy, as many of us recall meetings and conversations with Lilibeth. She did not back down. She was a trailblazer in terms of the ADRC work in Southern California, in LA County. And she will absolutely be missed. She was also just a lovely person, and she cared about her community, her family, the disability community, and just built relationships and spread love wherever she went. So we will we'll miss you, Lilibeth, and we will continue to do this work and hold you in our hearts. So have a great rest of your Friday, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for doing that, Eli.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks.
Okay, well, so are we?
Meeting is adjourned.
Okay, so this is the question